Hello, and welcome to the Boulder County Treasurer's Democratic Primary Candidate Forum, co-hosted by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County and Longmont Public Media. My name is Martine Eleanor. I am a proud member of the League, and I'm pleased to serve as moderator for today's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. For over 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government. Neither the League nor Longmont Public Media supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Now to the forum. The Boulder County Treasurer's Office collects taxes for real property, mobile homes, and business personal property, such as business equipment. The treasurer is also the public trustee, handling the release of deeds of trust and managing foreclosures. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Questions have been submitted electronically to the League by the community and reviewed by the League of Women Voters for their volunteer screeners. For most questions, each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. However, I may expand the time to answer, and then we'll finish with 1 minute closing statements. Tonight's forum participants are, in order they appear on the Democratic primary ballot, candidate Jen Cowish and candidate Rachel Friend. Now to the opening statements and questions. For the opening statements, we will begin with candidate Cowish.
Thank you. Hi there, everybody. I'm Jen Cowish. Thanks for the opportunity to share more about our campaigns tonight. I've spent my career managing operations and teams, budgets and investments, housing and lending issues, and real-world financial challenges, disasters included. I'm currently a council member for the town of Superior, and many people know me from my work helping with the Marshall Fire recovery. During that time, I worked in Washington to get a federal disaster tax bill passed, ensuring survivors were not taxed on their settlement funds. This kept millions of dollars in Boulder County, and now I get to share what we've learned with Maui and LA County when I travel to advise their governments on best financial recovery practices as well. I'm a proud Army veteran, and I bring more than 20 years of experience in real estate and lending. And collectively, all of these experiences tie in very well with the demands of the Treasurer's Office, and I look forward to sharing more about my vision for the office with you tonight. So thanks.
Candidate Friend.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm Rachel Friend. Thanks specifically to the League of Women Voters, Boulder County, and Longmont Public Media. And thank you, Jen, for switching over to virtual for my illness today. I really appreciate it. I am someone who loves public service, and through my work with the City of Boulder as City Councilor and Mayor Pro Tem for 4 years, and then through nonprofit work and through advocacy work, I've developed an increasing focus on county issues, which is what brings me to this race. I'm an attorney. I've worked at the highest levels of government. I worked as a federal law clerk, one step below the Supreme Court, and I've worked as an administrative law judge for the state. I've also been a chief operating officer for a nonprofit with over 400 employees, directly responsible for hiring and firing. I have a lot of experience with budgets and financial oversight through $500 million budgets. Mostly, I'm a pretty geeky person. I love people. I love connecting people with other people and with services, and I am hoping to provide outstanding service and bring increased transparency to the county through the Treasurer's Office. Thanks so much to everyone for being here.
Thank you. For our first question, we'll start with candidate Friend. What do you think is the most important aspect of the treasurer's work?
It's kind of hard because I think there's two really equal aspects. One is doing their professional job well. So it is sending out tax bills, receiving the money, investing the money wisely, and making sure that the money gets delivered to the entities that are supposed to receive it, such as cities and school districts. And then the second is running a really good office. So it's making sure that we have outstanding customer service, both internally and externally. A lot of my background is in offices and office management. So I think it's exceptionally important that we have the 10 people that work in the office have a very good workplace and want to keep doing that job. So that is a top priority for me, is ensuring that the office is well run and it's a happy place, and that we are able to give great customer service to the people coming into the office for their property tax needs.
Candidate Cowish.
Thank you. That was a great answer. I'd say in this similar line of that, predictability in what's happening in that office are the biggest priority, which falls into the safety of funds and ensuring that those get to the entities that are expecting them so that they can do what they need to do in the cities and schools and fire districts. But I also think accessibility is a very high priority for that office. People access it in many ways. And it's something that can feel complicated to navigate. So the easier the accessibility is to the office, to the information, and something I would like to build on from the office is really the understanding of how to navigate these systems. So access to information as well would be a top priority for me for the office.
For our next question, we'll actually allow 90 seconds for a response. A primary responsibility of the treasurer is to handle the banking and investment for the county. What specific investment and fiduciary experience do you have managing investment and other financial portfolios? Candidate Cowish.
Thank you. So prior to living in Colorado, I was actually a department head for the U.S. government for the Department of State, and I ran multi-million-dollar, multi-storefront operations. So that means that I handled not only the budget and revenue projection, but I handled the investment portfolio for those offices as well. I had multiple team staff where I had to navigate things between systems, not only US law, but the international law of the country that I was living in, as well as the US State Department law, which put another layer on top of that. And so I had to navigate that from the financial perspective in terms of being transparent and sharing how the organization was going to run with the American community and the State Department, but also sustainability of the department. So I, in one particular case, stood up an investment portfolio that didn't exist for this department that I was running, just to ensure long-term sustainability of the organization. And that, gosh, let's see. Well, that looked a lot more complicated than what we do just here in the United States because of having to navigate those multiple lanes of financial responsibility and requirements. And so I feel like there's been a lot of experience in that lane that will serve in this role as well.
Candidate Friend.
Thanks. So mine has come primarily through nonprofit work. And one of the nonprofits that I worked at, the one where we had 400 staff in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we did a lot of asset acquisition. So we had a lot of our funds was in properties. We were running group homes, so it was much more tied into properties. And then with the other nonprofits that I've worked in, it has been more oversight of the financials. So it has not been direct investing. And for that reason, I've already structured an investment advisory panel. A lot of people coming into this job do not have a lot of background with investment. The person who's doing it quite well right now for 12 years, Paul Weissman, came out of the state legislature, and before that, he was a bar owner and manager. So it is something that I feel, and a previous treasurer says it's a good idea to have a panel that is looking at it with me. So that's my plan. Thanks.
For the next question, it has to do with public outreach and property taxes. Many Boulder County homeowners have seen substantial increases in assessed values in recent years. What can the Treasurer's Office do to help residents understand and manage higher property tax bills? Candidate Friend.
So we can do education. The current treasurer and assessor do roadshows right now where they are going out to the community and especially advising on available exemptions. There's not a lot that anyone locally can do to lower anyone's property tax. That's not within the purview of the treasurer, nor the assessor has a lot of discretion there. They're working within state prescribed boundaries. So we can largely educate and we can try and provide as much upstream resources and education as possible, but there's very little that we can do that will um, help somebody who is struggling to pay their property tax, other than again provide good customer service and help on people who are having or for people who are having really hard days.
Candidate Cowish.
Yeah, thanks. So, one of my favorite success stories after the Marshall Fire was how we turned something that was a very financially complicated at a time when people were struggling with a disaster that they weren't expecting into an education and outreach program. And what that looked like was having weekly stand-ups where people could come and hear from myself or other folks that were running the recovery, experts in the field on how to understand what was actually needed in navigating these systems. And it's something that I teach in other cities that have gone through disaster, and it's something that I want to bring into the treasurer's office. I believe with the data that we have in the office, there should be the opportunity to use that to get in front of communities that are going to be struggling with these things. The education and outreach that happens currently, I think, can really be expanded on so that it's predictable and people can know to go to these places for information when it's the time that they actually need it.
For our next question, please describe how you would collaborate with other county officials for the betterment of Boulder County. What specific collaborations do you envision? Candidate Cowish.
So I touched on this a bit, but I really think that there's data sitting in the office of the treasurer that isn't being accessed to try to move from being reactive to people going through foreclosures or tax delinquency issues and actually be proactive about getting in front of this. The Boulder County Housing and Human Services does a great, robust job of helping people once they've reached those points. But I would like to, and I'm already reaching out and standing up folks who want to be involved in this to support in lending, housing, partnerships, nonprofits that could collectively be a resource that's more broad than just you've entered into foreclosure, here are your options. In fact, I would like to know which communities are being hit the most with these and use this group to work to get in front of those issues so that we could stop people from moving in that direction. And I think it's very possible in this role because of the data that's there and because of the partnerships that are already asking to be involved.
Candidate Friend.
So I think the question is, how do we collaborate or want to collaborate with other county officials? I would say that I've already been collaborating with a lot of county officials just through work, again, in the city of Boulder and then as a nonprofit. And I think that there is, first of all, a lot of dysfunction and lack of just connectivity in the county among the sort of elected level. So I've talked with people about trying to just do more of a monthly session where we get together and talk about the issues everyone's having and maybe humanize each other a bit more because I think that's lacking currently at the county level. There's a lot of frustration. And I've lived in Boulder. I now live in Lyons and sort of countywide with the efficacy of county governance. So the first thing I would try and do is to bring people together and see where we can collaborate better as county officials.
Colorado law prioritizes safety and liquidity in public investments. But given recent interest rate volatility, how would you maximize returns without exposing taxpayers to unnecessary risk? Candidate Friend.
So you're actually pretty limited in terms of what you can invest in. The state limits tightly where you are allowed to do that. So the county commissioners agree on January 1st, and pass a resolution, I think resolution number 6 every year, which says where you can do business in banks. So that's the Public Deposit Protection Act. So you're already fairly limited. I think that our returns used to be around 5%. This year, they're around 3.75%. Our current treasurer actually says that he does not really chase the highest returns, focuses on liquidity and the safety. So I think there are some limited things you can do, but within that bandwidth, there are ways you could do more local investment. I have also testified in the past on allowing for the public for credit unions to participate in the public banks, and I would be interested in advocating more for that to increase the opportunity for us to invest locally with credit unions.
Candidate Cowish.
Thanks. Yeah, I think candidate friend is absolutely correct about that one. It is quite limited in what we can do. So we don't have a lot of control over that piece of it. But I do think the local investments, absolutely, it's already something that's happening in the office. When it comes to trying to address volatility, I don't think that it is in that lane because it is so heavily prescribed. This is why I always come back to um, uh, prevention and doing things in the community that are actually going to help prevent people from being in these distressing situations, because the investment piece of it is so prescribed. Um, so again, it's back to the education and outreach around foreclosure, financial literacy, anything that this office, it's a paid government position, anything that this office can take off the backs of nonprofits and advocate for and stand up resources for community members, that's the direction that I'm going to go.
The treasurer's job is highly technical in nature. How do you plan to communicate financial information to the public? Candidate Cowish.
Well, I think there's quarterly reporting that happens now. I would like to actually see an increase in that. I realize there are some things like the investment funds that don't have a lot of changes that may not be necessary to be communicating out as frequently. But I do think that the office is a bit of a canary in a coal mine kind of situation where data trends are coming into that office that could be communicated and advocated out to, whether it's other county leadership, whether it's state leadership that is looking at budget lanes, or just the community and preparing for, we're seeing these trends and this is what's happening in these communities. So are you prepared for these things, and increasing the outreach component of it? From the perspective of sharing reports, I think that it's important to try to help people understand and digest it. Not everybody's going to look at a massive spreadsheet of property tax disbursements and comprehend all of it. So it needs to be rewritten in a way that is digestible for everyday people to absorb.
Candidate friend.
So I've found, again, when I was on city council, that the county was a bit of a black box in terms of information. I was often trying to find out, for example, exactly what the county was spending on homelessness, and it was really challenging to get that information. It wasn't publicly available. So one thing that I would like to do, and one reason that I am in this race, is that I think that the treasurer could, although maybe not the treasurer's responsibility, do a better job of transparency on behalf of the whole county. So I would like to go to every city, or at least offer to go if they'll have me, to every city council and every town council, and just offer updates on, here's the reserves, here's where they are, here's what's changed, here's what is in the budget this year, and here's what's changed, and what questions do you have? So I think there's a really great opportunity to improve education on an annual basis to everyone countywide.
Okay, we have another question having to do with the property taxes. Is the current outreach regarding property tax deferrals, senior homestead exemptions, tax offsets, and other property tax reduction programs adequate? What specifically would you implement to help these property owners take advantage of the programs available? Candidate friend.
So I know that candidate Kaush and I have both gone and watched the road shows that are happening right now, and I do think they've got a really nice slide deck and They've got the assessor there and the assessor staff, and they are very helpful and they are offering to do appointments. So, and my parents have gone, they're 83 and 86, have gone to one of the road shows and found them very helpful. So I think that as long as it can be done without increasing staff time if they don't have bandwidth, I think you could increase the volume of those and make sure that we're getting out to not just communities, but community centers. So like I used to be very involved with Fraser Meadows Retirement Home in Boulder. So you'd want to make sure that the road shows are going to individual places where there's a lot of people who probably qualify. Same thing with veteran centers. So I think they are doing a really good job and we could probably just do more, assuming that there is bandwidth.
Candidate Cowish.
Yeah, so I'm actually the chair of the Colorado Democratic Veterans Council, so I engage at the state level with veterans. And for me, because of that pre-existing relationship already there, that is a lane where I would love to see more outreach and education around what is an option for veterans. It's a very narrow lane, and deployments are usually in play when those are going to be some kind of benefit to veterans. Um, as far as the senior deferral part of it, now, as a council member and doing regional work, I go to a lot of senior breakfasts. And so I think there needs to be some sort of calendaring or lane for where are these opportunities where people actually are there and want to hear these, because the road show is great. It's good to attend, but I think there are other lanes for places that seniors are already joining and there to hear information about. So finding out what those are and mapping those out, I think would be very important.
Our next question is on privacy and cybersecurity. We'll do 90 seconds for this question to respond. Cyber attacks against local governments have increased nationwide. What specific steps would you take to protect Boulder County taxpayer funds and financial data? What investments in technology and fraud prevention should be prioritized over the next 4 years? We'll start with candidate Cowish.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's an interesting question because we have been dealing with this at the local level with our council. They're really tricky and they're very good at these attacks, whether they're just directly, via email to a staff member or a lot more coordinated effort. But I think training, number one, to make sure, I know like in the military and the State Department, we have regular cyber training in instances, so these instances weren't something that we weren't paying attention to. So I think keeping people paying attention that they should be looking for them. So through regular training, and I imagine because we do this with our council that the county has some lanes for this to ensure that employees that have access to funds and could approve funds moving around are also required to do this. And if they're not, that would be the first conversation, but I'm sure they do that. And then second, as far as protecting them, I think one of the things the treasurer always is going to have to do is stay on top of training for whatever the current issues that are coming. And those could be things that we can't even foresee at this point. So I think making sure that I'm tracking and tied into whatever the state, whatever the state level and federal level information is coming for the treasurer to continuously be learning and educating myself on how to respond to these things.
Candidate Friend.
So I would really need to answer this question well. I would need to know what the current treasurer's office is doing already on cybersecurity. So, and I don't know that. It's been a little, you don't want to overstep and impose too much on the current treasury staff time while you're running for office. And so that this is not something I've gone into. I have met with the CFO. I think I would work closely to make sure that we're aligned with the practices that they're using, and then would obviously be joining the state and national associations and keeping up with best practices. And they have a lot of trainings at the state level to make sure that counties are safe and secure. So again, to say what I would change and implement in the next 4 years, that would be really hard without knowing what's already in place. So I would just follow best practices and obviously also defer to the staff who's currently doing the job and make sure that we are incorporating their suggestions.
Would you support publishing more detailed reports that show the investment performance, holdings, and risk exposure? Candidate friend.
If doing so would help the public and not harm the accounts. So I would want to know what the more detail required is. If it's something that would put us at risk, obviously I would not support doing that. But generally speaking, I am running to increase transparency to the extent that that is helpful for transparency and not harmful to the county's positions. I would love to increase the transparency in that way.
Candidate Cowish.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree on that. I during this process, prior to running for this seat, it was not a regular habit of mine to go and dig into the county budget unless I had like a specific question. And lately, I have found that certain questions that I've had, I just can't find the answer to, and I don't think it's because it's not there. It's just the accessibility to more data in some of the funding reports isn't publicly available without reaching out to the current treasurer and asking. So I do think there should be more available, but to Rachel's point, there's a level of security and protection that would need to be there as well. So not just an open an open book.
Our next question concerns privacy. What kinds of private information does the Treasurer's Office collect? And how do you plan to protect the private information of Boulder County citizens? We'll start with Candidate Cowish.
That one's tricky because I don't actually know all the details of what is collected, not being in the role currently. So I will use just my own common sense from training I've had. But personal information, what we call PII, in the State Department and the military is very protected. And so even just being conscious that, one piece of information might not tell somebody something and another piece might not, but together those two would provide information that could do harm to somebody. So I already have a lens for operational security and privacy protections that's kind of built in. And again, I don't know what it looks like on the backside, behind the house in the treasurer's office, but I would just want to maintain or even possibly increase if I was seeing some things that looked concerning to me coming into the role.
Candidate friend.
So I think maybe it's the assessor's office who collects the information more than the treasurer's office, and they have mechanisms in place that you can ask to have your data made private. So there are certain categories that qualify for that, like teachers and elected officials. So I think that in some ways is more of a question for the assessor because then the assessor just takes the assessed value and the bill and gives it over to the treasurer's office. So I think maybe the change would need to come from the assessors. There's also a lot of like subpoenas that come in for deeds and foreclosures, and obviously all of that information needs to be safe kept and guarded. That's not going to be something that's publicly accessible on the internet the way though that your home value might be. So that again is an assessor's question though.
Our next question is about character. What is one of the biggest mistakes you have made professionally, and what did you learn from it? Did you correct it, and how? Candidate friend.
Can I say running for Boulder City Council is a large professional error in judgment? I remember getting really somebody was very mad at me in my legal practice when I filed something that they asked to be filed. So I can't remember what the document was, but it was something that they asked me to prepare and file, and I filed it, and it turned out that they had wanted it filed a week later. So it was not catastrophic, but it was something that stood out as an error and something that I could have made better with just better communication. So I've always double checked after that on things that have consequences like that. So I would say that mostly what I learned is better communication.
Candidate Cowish.
Yeah, every time this question comes up in environments like this, I always think of this time I was in Jordan and I was running the services there, and it was Ramadan in the country, well, all over the world, but it was the time of year. And in the role that I had staff that ran a restaurant, and we ran out of bacon, which is really not a big deal here in America. But in Jordan, it was specially ordered, international, brought there. And during this particular time of year, is very sensitive for the Muslim community, for anything having to do with pork products to be moving around, and found out that we were out of it completely. So the Americans were very upset because they weren't going to have it. And it was a bacon gate. But the long story of that is, short story of that is, it was communication, taking responsibility for where systems had failed, and having some humor about this. In this particular case, we're not talking about people's money, we were talking about food. So, it was okay to have some humor about it, but yeah, I will never forget that mistake. So.
Our next question concerns the current petitions that are circulating regarding ballot issues. Do you support either or both of the two ballot issues currently circulating petitions with regards to TABOR, also known as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights? Why or why not? Candidate Cowish.
I apologize. I think you're talking about the graduated tax income. I'm not aware of another one. But up around that one, yes, I definitely support that. I know that organizations are coming up with creative ways to move within the confines of TABOR without actually breaking TABOR as a whole, or having to go to the ballot to vote, against or for modifying TABOR or removing it altogether. So I think, yeah, yes.
Candidate Friend.
I only know the graduated income tax one as well. So I don't know if you want to clarify what the second measure is, or if it may be something that just came into you and is not known. But yes, also supportive of that one. It's Colorado overall has such regressive sales taxes, and the tax landscape is difficult and tricky for people who aren't making a lot of money. So very supportive of the graduated income tax and other ways that we can move the needle for people. And also, I got really excited. I thought you were going to ask about the county ballot measure. So I'm strong yes on expanding county commissioners 3 to 5, and also supportive of the home rule one, in case anybody's wondering that too.
A rarely discussed responsibility of the treasurer is to serve as public trustee. As treasurer, you would handle the release of real estate loans, property conveyance, and manage the lengthy and complicated foreclosure process. What experience do you have that qualifies you to carry out those specific responsibilities? Candidate Friend.
So, as an attorney, those are very legalistic processes. So, I have the training for it, and the legal education for it. I also worked early on in my career on some in the field of elder law, and there were some foreclosures involved, and so went through that with a couple of clients.
Oh, I forgot the timer, but thank you for answering. Candidate Cowish.
Yeah. As I mentioned in my intro, I have 20 years more probably of real estate, finance, lending experience in that arena. Gone through 2008 crisis and COVID, housing insanity. I feel very comfortable talking about and navigating, administering the finances around foreclosure issues, property taxes, all of these things I speak about regularly and advise my clients on how to navigate these things. And unfortunately, have gone through foreclosures with some of them. So the bigger part to me, the legal side and how it has to be administered is heavily important. But I also there's a human side of it, and holding space for people when they're going through that is something that I've had experience doing and would like to be that person for people as this office navigating that. Oh, sorry.
Okay, we'll go back to the ballot issue. If the graduated income tax is passed by the people, how will that change your role as Boulder County Treasurer? Candidate Cowish.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that? Something was making noise.
Sure. If the graduated income tax is passed, the ballot measure, if that is passed, how will that change your role as Boulder County Treasurer?
Hmm. Gosh. I'm sorry, so my understanding of it is that it was tax at a different rate, people that make above a certain amount of money. It wouldn't change anything for those that make below that amount. Um, I I mean the connection of how that will impact things in the treasurer's office is um, gosh, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I apologize. The sounds were distracting, and trying to connect this income tax piece to what's happening in the treasurer's office that handles property taxes and tax delinquency. I'm not seeing the connection right now.
Candidate Friend.
I would agree. I don't believe there's much connection there because what the taxes that we're talking about are property, um, and it's the tax that this ballot measure is talking about is your income. So the only possible nexus I could make is maybe, ideally, if people are able to preserve more of their income, then maybe there would be fewer foreclosures or tax liens. That's about as close as I can get to something there.
When you first take office, what would you change, if anything, right away about the work and practice of the treasurer's office, and why? Candidate Friend.
So I've been around long enough to know that you would be an idiot to do anything day one if you're coming into an office that you're not already a part of. So I would go in there and mostly watch and observe and connect and listen to the people who are doing the work, because if you went in there and tried to make a change, I think that could have catastrophic outcomes on staff morale. And so there's nothing I would do day one. I think maybe day one is when the commissioners pass their resolution for what you can invest in. So I probably would advocate for that. And there are many things that I would advocate for in terms of possible modernization and ways that the office could maybe flow better for the community. But all of that I would want to listen and learn from our staff. And also, I think you need to listen to community. We haven't had a lot of opportunity to connect with the people doing the job because you don't really want to burden them while you're just a candidate.
Candidate Cowish.
Yeah, fully agree. my thoughts are that the transition between an outgoing treasurer and the incoming treasurer should not be felt by anybody in the community, in the sense of how operations are happening. So definitely no changes. But in my role with the State Department, it was frequent that I came into existing teams as the lead with people who had been there for many, many years, who often feel trepidation about whoever is coming, this new person they don't know, they don't get any choice in the matter. And suddenly now they go from who they've been with and established these relationships with to now somebody who they don't know and they don't know what it's going to look like. So a lot of my focus will just be learning how things work and exist. I don't think you can make changes unless you understand a system, and it's going to take time to do that, but also to make sure that all the staff that are there feel safe and that we're working as a team before something like that happens.
Why do you believe, or why are you better qualified than your opponent to hold the office of Boulder County Treasurer? Candidate Cowish.
I think that my experience lines up very well with this. I have operational finance and executive management background and real estate and lending side. And between the treasurer role and the public trustee role, those experiences are everything to inform me from whether I'm administering it or working with clients, working with the community members, working in a public budget, working in private investment. All of those things have really, for me, uniquely collectively synthesized into a lot of it makes sense for this role. And so mostly I'm just really excited that these kind of mix matched of experiences somehow teed up right now at this time. And I also am a pretty aggressive defender and protector of what I consider to be very important resources for our community. And I would like to be in that seat to make sure I can do that.
Candidate Friend.
First, I want to say I find these questions a little bit brutal because I don't want to imply anything negative about my opponent. So I just want to level set with that. But according to the current treasurer, the key attributes for a member of the team and the treasurer are honesty, attention to detail, and team building. And so that is my background. I am honest almost to a flaw. I have a very good attention to detail just through your legal work. Like it is drilled in and what we do. Same with being honest. A lot of my jobs have required incredible levels of confidentiality and emotional vulnerability, and you have to be very honest with people. And then team building, I will just share that on my college application, they let us review that at Stanford our freshman year, and they called me the glue, the kind of person that holds the university together. I've just always been somebody who is drawn to connecting people.
Now we'll move on to closing statements. The candidates will have 1 minute for closing statements, and we will begin with Candidate Friend.
Okay, we're already here. I thought we had 15 more minutes. Okay, so I want to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions. Thank you for being informed and attentive voters. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Boulder County and Longmont Public Media. I think the North Star to public service is that it's part social work and part the job duty. So I love to repeat this line from Leslie Knope, Parks and Rec. What I hear when I'm being yelled at is people carrying loudly at me. I think in today's politics, we're often going for jugulars and fighting, and there is so much caring loudly. And I can fight, but I think in this world, we really need bridge builders and people who are kind to each other. So the best way that I've heard this job described is that you are saving and safekeeping the county's money and creating a vibe within the team. I will advocate for needed upgrades to serve the community. I will push for sensible change, but I will mostly work hard to create a good vibe for staff and community members and to have really outstanding service. I'd be honored to have your vote, and I really appreciate you all being here. And thanks again to Jen for moving this virtual for me.
Candidate Cowish.
Well, Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thanks for everybody who participated with questions. Thanks for anybody who's still watching. The treasurer role is not always the most exciting role to discuss in the county, especially when we have all these other scintillating issues going on. But I do want to impress upon people that right now, while funds are being cut at the state and federal level, and while our systems are being tested and our nonprofits are being pressed, anybody who is about to be elected into a paid government position better have a vision of doing more for the community than just the job requirements. And I have been speaking about this regularly on the campaign trail, that is something that I think it's imperative that this office does, to make sure that we are being preventative and using the information in the office to help the community more than it's doing now.
Thank you, everyone. And on behalf of the League and Longmont Public Media, I want to thank our candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work. Thank you to our forum volunteers for their essential help. A huge thank you goes out to our 2026 election sponsor, Elevations Credit Union. A short and sweet reminder that donations to the League of Women Voters of Boulder County help us continue our education and advocacy in the community. For more information about the League and to donate, please go to www.lwvbc.org. And for more information about the upcoming election and the candidates, please go to the League's premier voter information guide, vote411.org. And as always, remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you all for coming virtually, and we'll virtually give you a round of applause for serving democracy. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful night.